All right, the first person who guesses what this quote is from will receive this drawing in the mail. How is that? Dutch session number 3. I think this is going to be the last one because we're leaving in about 3 days. So this time I'm just going to do sort of a mindless stripes. Imagine I'm a printer and I'm printing stripe by stripe. And then I'm going to reflect on it and see what I can get out of it. Starting from the upper left corner, just like with writing in any Western language. So looking back at the videos I've done so far and the subject matter that I was discussing, there's a lot of complaining about capitalism and about how everything is dictated by money and by having to survive, and how having to make money taints the pure experience of everything. So I'll tell you more after this commercial break. Just kidding. So yeah, I don't want to, I'm saying things as they appear in my head, and it's almost as if my mouth is running wild and I don't control it because it's a stream of consciousness experience. I draw abstract things while I'm expressing my abstract thoughts, and as a result, you hear various things that may be confused with a firm opinion, and these are things that I'm still testing. These are waters I've never waded in. So I'm just expressing things as they come, and then I get surprised about things that I never thought were what I was feeling. And I've been complaining a lot about the system, the free market and capitalism system that controls everything and influences our decisions, our morality, our choices, our entertainment. But I don't want to give you an impression that I'm against the idea of bringing a value into the world and turning it into capital, into money, and then spending it wisely on something else, like luxuries like food and shelter. I don't have anything against healthy entrepreneurship, especially when it comes with interesting ideas, with solutions, making life easier in general for everybody. And if it's a healthy, dynamic exchange of capital within the market, then great. It's a great way to make sure things are progressing and growing, and there's competition that also makes us strive for better quality, smarter solutions. The only thing that I complain about, I think, is when we lose control, when money becomes the primary force. And then when our need to make money, to amass as much of it as possible, turns us into empty and greedy people. And also evil. The motivation to enrich oneself is the source of many bad decisions, many crimes, wanting things, being above others, which is sort of like one of the primary forces driving progress too sometimes. When you think about it, when the first cars were invented, people were dreaming about, just imagine how I would drive my motor vehicle, my automobile around, and all these losers would look at me and be envious, and I would just give them a middle finger. And the same goes for other things like flying cars. We want flying cars because we're fantasizing about being free of traffic and literally rising above the mundane, plebeian reality of people stuck in traffic and being frustrated. And we would just look down upon them and spit and show them a middle finger. And that's just everything that makes us special motivates us to progress, to come up with these new solutions. And the same goes for, I think, upgrades. Like, the air travel is a great example. We have layers. The airplane is like an onion. It has layers. It has like platinum, silver, gold levels, and there's business class, there's first class, and I think first class is fancier than a business class. But when you think about it, those fancy strata of flying an airplane, it's just nothing more than having extra legroom and being able to stretch your seat to the reclining position, maybe having slightly better lunch, dinner menu. But when you think about it, it's just nothing more luxurious than what you have on the ground. You can sit in your chair, you can lie down, you can even take a shower when you're not flying. And then when you fly, what makes you pay for these extra perks is not the perks themselves, but the comparison with the lowly types in the back, being able to look them in the face as they climb on board of a plane with their sour expressions on their faces and going back to the economy class while you're already sipping a bubbly champagne and stretching your legs in the business class. And it's really nothing more luxurious than any other conditions that you live in on the ground. It's just a little bit more legroom, and you pay a lot more for it. And the price you pay is not the luxury itself, but just being able to put yourself in context of how better off you are than those who are squeezing themselves in the back and maybe watching slightly older movies and eating a little bit more plain meals. It's sort of a way in which wealth divides people. People strive to be divided in such a way. They want to be special. They want to be above those, penguins down there and soar like an eagle. Throw them a middle feather. So I'm nearing the end of this line here. And just like the typewriter, I'm going to end here and then move over to the left again and start over. So yeah, when I grew up in communist Poland, it was supposed to be a communist country. It was under the rule of a government that was controlled by the Soviet government. So the government in Poland were not Soviets, they were not Russians, but they were answering directly to the leaders of Soviet Union, and they had to be responsible for what's going on within the Polish borders. And the cravings that we had, being stuck in this reality of closed borders and grayness and just dread and drab reality, was sort of the fantasizing about the Western world and all the culture that came from the United States, the songs, the music, the films, gadgets, the sweets. We could experience them only if we had a special currency. We had like a little tickets that we could acquire somehow, and we'd be able to buy stuff from a special store that was selling Western goods. But ironically, only the people that were in the party circles could acquire these goods. So ironically, the government that was preaching hatred towards the West and its culture was the only society group that could partake in the Western culture and Western food. The regular person didn't have access to all these toys and foods, and even the food was rationed. We had like little stamps, food stamps, apportioned amount of meat per month, and there was a lot of exchange. People were exchanging these stamps amongst each other for like goods that were hard to come by, like even stockings or coffee or tea, all that stuff that was nowhere to be found in the stores. Like, so you could have a lot of money even somehow, and you still would have to think hard about where to find someone always said there was a lot of people who had a guy who knew a guy and who knew where you could get some kind of black market ham or coffee, or even like sanitary products like cotton swabs were really hard to find, and the pads, the hygiene stuff was hard to find. And if you had someone in the family who had a farm, you were lucky. Like if you were in a rural area, you could rely on some family members who had maybe chickens or cows, sheep, maybe a little garden with some fresh produce. because relying on the government subsidized, government-owned groceries was really a risky business. So it was interesting. So yeah, it was our craving was to have this healthy kind of entrepreneurship that was not penalized, that we could all have maybe little, jewelry shop, shoe repair shop, and whatever people like doing, and some people did manage to actually create these businesses as soon as the communism turned and fell, and in the 90s there was a big boom of entrepreneurship. The downside of that boom was in Poland that it was unregulated, and there was a lot of irregularities and slightly sketchy practices, or not even a little bit more than slightly. There was a lot of tax evasion and some really semi-legal or totally illegal practices that were later dealt with, and people were penalized. So like my parents worked for a guy who created a shoe company, because the giant national shoe factory that was giving jobs to everybody in my small town, my hometown, fell, of course, because communism fell, and then there was no money to maintain these giant factories, and it fell and split into tiny parts, and some of the parts, there was a lot of stealing too. Like after this factory fell, a lot of the materials, a lot of tools and machines were standing there empty and getting rusty, and people would just come in and take it. And whoever took whatever they wanted, like whoever took enough, they could now open their own business. And sometimes they would buy parts of the factory and refurbish them. So that's what happened to the guy who owned the company that my parents worked for, and they've been doing really well. My dad was like a director of production or something, and it was kind of like the best period in their life. And then the dude was caught cheating on taxes, and he is now in jail. My parents lost their jobs, and then for a while they couldn't get rehired because it was difficult to find something new. So it was a big 90s entrepreneurship boom, and then it was this sudden flop. It was like a boom, and then it exploded and then imploded, and there was a lot of unemployment, and then suddenly all these wild capitalists or pseudo-capitalists that just were in the game to enrich themselves were caught cheating. A lot of companies were closed, and then suddenly people found themselves in a pickle. They couldn't find new jobs, and a lot of people right around that period started leaving. So like early 2000s, a lot of Polish people would live and work abroad. So great emigration to the British Islands, to Scotland, to Ireland and Great Britain. Partially something that really contributed to Brexit was that there was an influx of Eastern European workers that were believed to infringe on the British in their job, seeking their jobs. So basically they took our jobs was the accusation. And then of course, as a lot of young people, millions of young people left Poland, and the government was so proud because suddenly the statistics showed that the unemployment went down. But why did it go down? Because it's not that there was suddenly more jobs, it was because there was less people. But it's good for the campaign and campaign slogan. We defeated unemployment. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It's technically true. The unemployment was defeated by decreasing the number of citizens who could find jobs in Poland. So that was the kind of our first clash with what it can mean to be in a capitalist reality, in free market world. It was bitter lesson, and my parents learned it the hard way. They've struggled for a long time. So they actually learned the lesson because it felt very cool to look at the United States and other Western countries and see how people could actually achieve success by trying their skills at selling stuff, services, making their own money, and it felt like freedom. But the price of it was that people lost the protection of the government. So socialism would provide them with services, with medicine, free education, free healthcare, safety nets. Suddenly, when everybody became capitalist, everybody hated communism and socialism to the point of eradicating anything that even remotely have something to do with these ideas. So like suddenly even public transportation was neglected because it reminded people of communism, and like, let's everybody get a car, and then soon enough the traffic jams were just ridiculous, and because everybody was driving their own car, and even in small towns where you could actually walk that distance, people would rather drive it and then jam up the roads. So they're slowly learning that lesson, but still the public transport in my hometown, for example, is in very poor shape. There are basically no longer any buses going to most of the destinations, and they're still trying to figure it out. Like, the traffic. It's horrible traffic. What can we do about that traffic? When I tell them, just maybe build a train tracks, maybe trolley or bus line, bus network. No, that's communism. All right, stay in your car then. Happy cancer. Inhale the fumes of the traffic jam. So that's the strangeness of human stubbornness and the kind of black and white thinking. It's like, you can either be a communist or capitalist. You cannot, or socialist or capitalist. You cannot be both. I'm thinking about examples of things that actually are an example of not being able to have both things at the same time. You can't be wet and dry at the same time, although you can be wet, from head to waist and dry from waist to toes. You can be half wet. You can't be, I don't know. You cannot be loved and hated at the same time, or can you? you can't have cake and eat it too. I believe I already addressed this absurd saying. Yes, you can have cake and eat it too. The condition of eating a cake is having it. If you can eat the cake without having it, I would like to see that. How that works. Alright, so I have a third stripe going on, and so far it's just some shapes that are sort of emerging, like lines and shapes and blobs. But it's a different strategy, it's a little bit more methodical. Right, so yeah, so I hope I clarified that I'm not rigidly against entrepreneurship, capitalism, and making your own money. And I mean, I do wish, it's sort of naive to think that it could be possible to dream about a world where money is not an issue. The world that has been imagined by creators of Star Trek series, where when money is not the issue. Although the aliens called Ferengi are still kind of an example of greedy creatures. So I guess there's still struggle for resources, but because of the invention of multiplicators, kind of like 3D printing for everything, I think the money was abolished in that world. So Jacques-Luc Picard could approach the multiplicator and say, Earl Grey, hot. And it would give him Earl Grey. And nobody would have to worry about first working very hard to earn some kind of units, whether it's grains of salt or chunks of gold or paper bills, and then turning it into whatever value or goods they want from life. You just go directly to the source. Just like it used to be in the barter economy, where if you wanted a service, if you wanted a tooth removed by a blacksmith, then you would bring the blacksmith some chickens. And it was kind of just an exchange. It was basically people supporting each other, helping each other, which is still, you can still observe it on some level in our society, the kind of unconditional urge to help, kind of going beyond the system of if you want to eat, you have to earn money and then you have to spend it on the food. No, if you in any way unable to make money and then eat because of that, then at a certain point the fellow humans will look at you starving, and something will change in them. You will say, this has to stop, we have to help this human and forget about the rules. Sort of like compared to the whole kind of system and the way money works, I compare it to the game Floor is Lava, where by fiat one of the kids playing the game says floor is lava, and then suddenly everybody believes it and has to make sure that they're off the ground. And that's the same kind of contract where we're led to believe that something is true, like you need this many paper rectangles to buy a house. yeah, it's some people knew how to rig the game. Floor is lava. Ah, but I have lava boots. Lava boots protect me from lava. You can just make up the rules. The key is to make people believe that your rules are legitimate. Maybe the way to do it is to buy it, to have money. You basically make reality happen when you have enough money. You can get away with even the most hideous crimes, as we are observing right now. The whole cover-up that we're looking at these days is just so giant and so horrendous that we're facing a total collapse of the establishment because everybody powerful is implicated in the scandal. Almost everybody, and just because they wanted something that can't be bought. You can buy everything, but then there's something missing, and then you're craving it, and you don't know what it is, and then you're a predator. Oh, there's a big rain outside. So the Dutch weather, I have to admit, it's a winter weather. I've been here last December and now in February, and it's been cloudy and rainy pretty much every day. There's some shiny day here and there, but not the whole day. There's like 5 minutes of sun and then downpour and then hail, strong wind, rain, more rain, darkness. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the weather here. But what do I like about Netherlands? I don't know much about the entire country. I know that there are nuances and there's also difference between rural and urban areas, but when I walk down the streets here, Amsterdam or Leiden, it just feels kind of chill. Like I feel like I could put on a tutu and like a horse mask and just walk down the street and everybody would be like smiling and waving, and it's so you can do your own thing and people are not giving you a stink eye about it. And it's sort of relaxed. It feels safe. You can do your own thing. That's kind of one thing that's really important, and that's one thing that I appreciate about being in Netherlands. I can be myself, and I feel like there's this everything is sort of set up at a human scale. When I'm in the States, everything feels like you have to drive everywhere, and everybody is kind of barricading themselves in their little gated houses, communities, and their fortresses, clutching their guns. And here, like, everything is so open. People don't have curtains in their rooms. You can walk down the street and you can see a person reading a book in their kitchen on the ground floor. Nobody cares. And it's just sort of the street, the inside and the outside are more unified and more accessible in some way. It feels more human. So that's one comparison. And then there are some things that I like about the States, which is a lot of space, a lot of personal space, which I appreciate because I need my own space. I don't want people to pressure me. I'm what's called introvert, even though I don't really subscribe to these sort of labels. The Briggs scale, I don't know, Briggs and something. The personality types, which is just pure BS to me. It's like, what kind of person are you? Like, people can read you from the first meeting and then they won't give you a chance. They're like, oh, that guy is number 4 on the whatever scale of personality types, because he's crossing his arms in front of his chest. That's how I can tell, and therefore I'm putting him in this box. And then if you don't give people a chance, they will not surprise you. I mean, like, how predictable do you think people are based on just your first impression? Can you predict really what people are like based on first impression? Or can you give them a little bit of a chance? Like, like usually what I get from strangers is that somehow, especially that I have foreign accent that makes me sound a little bit more like a child. A lot of people assumes right off the bat that I'm less intelligent, and then they over-explain things to me, and they are pronouncing their words very carefully and making sure that I understand, explaining very obvious things to me, and it just drives me nuts because I'm not what they think I am. And I've seen at least one foreigner that had this problem, not just in the States, but also like in Poland. I met some foreign exchange students when I was in college, and one of them was a really nice lady from Denmark, who was an artist. And she spoke really great Polish, which is like, how can you even learn this twisted language in like very short amount of time? But she was really frustrated. She told me that the teacher she was talking to was like treating her like a child. And like, I'm not a child, I'm a 32-year-old woman. It's only because her Polish people in Poland are not used to foreigners speaking Polish, and her Polish sounded very cute and kind of childlike. And I sometimes would catch myself like kind of perceiving her as younger than she seemed, because she had this kind of childlike way of speaking Polish, because it's a hard language. And also, when you are speaking a foreign language, you're kind of on guard all the time, and your confidence is constantly questioned by your own brain. You don't have confidence as much as when you speak your native language, and it makes you sound like you're hesitating. You're hesitating about choosing your words, not about the subject matter, or not about the actual decisions. And then that makes people feel like you are somehow not very confident, hesitating, and maybe you don't know what you're doing, and they want to help you extra, and they give you unsolicited advice. So like when you're a 50-year-old guy in the States, you find 20-year-olds giving you life advice. And, dude, I'm 50. You will understand someday. Like the unsolicited advice is the best. Yeah, I like complaining about humans. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm not a sociopath or misanthrope. I just humans can be annoying, but you can stay mad at them. So like, what I was going to say, 20-year-old people giving me life advice at 50. So yeah, that has to be interesting. But yeah, the unsolicited advice to people that are struggling is always interesting. Like, people ask you things like, have you tried yoga, or try going vegan? That will change your anxiety levels and well-being. I mean, it's a great advice, but yoga is not, or even meditation is not a solution to everything. I mean, you can meditate in the worst life circumstances, but if you're not addressing them, then meditation or yoga is just a cop-out, an escape, or even postponing what has to be done. You have to address those issues. You can't stay in an abusive relationship or in a horrible workplace. You have to address those things, and then you can just making sure that you dealt with those elements of your life. Then you can think about yoga, veganism, or meditation. I tried veganism and I almost died. I realized that it's probably not something I should be doing. It's not something that I did wrong. I actually ate quite rich and plentiful vegan dishes, but even no matter how much I ate, I compensated for protein and everything. I just, over time, I felt depleted and anxious, and I had to I remember just having to buy a bunch of cold cuts and eating the slices, because and as soon as I ate them, I felt normal. Because I felt really, I didn't feel myself, I felt shaky. So if there are any vegans out there, let me know if there's anything that maybe there are people who are not meant to be vegan. Maybe certain cell composition prevents them from depriving themselves of meat protein. And yeah, I would really like to part with the procedure of, eating animals and separate myself from the meat industry. By the way, Brazil just made it illegal to harm animals. I think the law extended to pets, dogs and cats, I think. Their Supreme Court decided that these animals are sentient and they're protected by law. Yeah, so better late than ever, I guess. But how can you in 21st century, in 2026, you need a legislature that protects animals because they're sentient? We finally drew that conclusion. How can you not know that observing animals? Because we're not observing them, that's why. We're only looking at the end of our own noses and looking after our own riches and our own benefits. The commandment in the Bible to subjugate the earth because you are the masters of the earth. So yeah, it's objectively wrong. You could try to defend it by saying it's an imprecise translation or something, but I think the mentality back there, it wasn't just the Bible. The mentality of humans in the ancient times was that they assumed that everything was for them, and they had to like just grab it. Whatever they could catch was theirs, and it was difficult, much more difficult back then. So they had to believe that, you know, nature is giving them those gifts, or gods, and if they couldn't find food, it meant that gods were angry. They had to have explanation for something, for everything that happened to them. And we're still seeking patterns. Even now, I'm seeking patterns in this abstract jumble of shapes. And that's why we have art. Music is a pattern-seeking activity, and art, and we try to find meaning in artworks, sometimes to a fault. We kind of overthink stuff and read into stuff that's not there. And especially, I'm sort of entertained by some of the descriptions I see in galleries sometimes, when sometimes artists write their own descriptions to their work, and it's so overwritten and so over speculated that it just makes me laugh sometimes. Like, I saw a neon sign piece of art, very clever, very cool piece of art, using neons, blinking neons, that would emphasize parts of the word in a very clever way. It was in Polish, so I'm not going to explain too much. And then the description that the artist wrote was this like diatribe about what neon really is, and like neon resembles the neon sign resembles humans in a way that the pipe is like an artery, and the gas that surges through the pipe is like a blood. And like, no, it's just a neon, just give it a rest. It's not necessary to like dissect every single element of reality to make your piece seem deeper. It's already a pretty cool piece. You don't have to try too hard. Just, you know, this is like making artworks about language. Artists write descriptions like, oh, language comes from the tongue. The tongue is a muscle, and it's part of the human body, and there's this whole like esoteric almost like investigation, which is a cool, I guess it's a cool brain exercise. But it's, if you write a description, I would urge to make it brief, because I don't have time, nobody does, for reading lengthy paragraphs attached to a piece of art. I want the art to speak for itself. I mean, sometimes it is necessary to learn about the context of the artwork. But if it's not necessary, then I wouldn't bother with descriptions. So yeah, recently I've seen an art show that was about like social issues, and it was sort of like dissecting the problem of xenophobia and what does it mean to be hospitable and welcoming. And then it kind of hit me. I used to actually make this sort of art where I was just looking through news, and if something spoke to me, I would be like, oh, that's going to be huge, I'm going to make art about it right now. Or like, what could happen, what could possibly happen with this piece of news? I'm going to predict it and make art about it, and when it happens finally, I'm going to be perceived as a prophet because I predicted it in my artwork, and then I'm going to show it in a prestigious gallery. basically I'm going to show a piece about suffering of other humans, and I'm going to show it in the gallery, maybe get nice press and sell it, maybe even. Maybe I'll get a grant for it, $500,000 to make the piece about homelessness. And like, wait a minute, why can't you just donate $500,000 to a cause that directly battles homelessness? Why do you have to have your name inflated and shown? Oh, look at me, I really care about homelessness because I made a $500,000 piece about it in a art gallery. 0.01% of society will attend and see my piece. So I'm kind of, lately I've been trying to get away from this sort of art making, and I'm questioning it now because I think that directly getting involved with issues through activism will do a much better job than making an obscure art piece in a gallery that nobody visits. It's sad, but it's true. And of course, raising awareness about stuff, that's another thing that we have to defend. So of course you do need to raise awareness about those things, but why can't you raise awareness by just disseminating information about the issue, or even presenting it in some sort of way? Why does it have to be framed as art? Why does it have to be about your own artistic ego and your career? Why does it have to be in your resume, your portfolio? Like, it's almost twisted to be an artist that deals with social issues like homelessness. It's like, oh, look at my neat piece about homelessness. So that's kind of a beef I have with it, although I'm not blanket criticizing all the sort of activist art. There's a lot of stuff out there that's very important. I guess I'm just thinking about my own attitude towards it, because maybe as an artist I used to be disingenuous about my own practice. An example of it is in my 20s, before I immigrated to the States, I made a piece that was kind of innocent. I just bought a bunch of model airplane kits, World War II airplanes, Polish airplanes, just those plastic kits that you can assemble. They're just about this big, just as big as my hand, basically, slightly larger. And they were easily assembled. I assembled like maybe 25 of them. So I packed every single of these airplanes in a nice padded box and addressed every single box to a different American art institution, and I sent them out, and I called it an air raid. It was just kind of silly, innocent piece, kind of flirting with these major institutions, because I thought, oh, I'm going to the States, maybe I should make myself known and send something to those great institutions in the States. Nothing came of it, of course, but then 9/11 happened. The Twin Towers fell, and it was done with airplanes. It happened within weeks after my piece was known. And then I was like, oh, this is an opportunity. And I sent my piece to a kind of internet magazine in Poland. Oh, look at this. I made this air raid piece, and then shortly after the country was attacked, and then there was this like surge of small fame, I would call it, in Poland. It would be shown in some internet magazines like, oh, this artist made this piece and it's so prophetic, and it was like, wow, how did he know? Artists truly are visionaries. And it was just a coincidence, but it was this kind of almost like a vulture waiting for something horrible to happen, and then when it does, it's like you pounce and you take advantage of it, and like you just use that tragedy to advance your own interests. So that's my sin of the past. I was young and silly. And yeah, I'm kind of, as you can see, I am abandoning this sort of reactive type of creative activity, going into mindless mindfulness, abstract stream of consciousness, although it's not the only activity that I'm engaged with. There's other things that I might share on this channel. But actually you might have a glimpse in some of my other videos. Maybe there's a link to my website, I don't even remember. Are you an artist or are you activist? Can you be both? That's another thing. You can have cake and eat it too, right? Maybe you can be an artist and an activist. But then you kind of have to kind of decide what is the art part and what is the activist part, because you don't want to slap your name on your efforts and like demand admiration from people. Like, oh, look at me, look what I've done. I donated all this money to these little kids in Africa so that they can have drinking water. Look at me. There's a commemorative plaque there with my name on it. Yeah, it's fine. And as long as it helped the kids, you can be an egomaniac, but if you do something good, then does it matter that you are sort of entertaining your narcissism a little bit? I don't know. Good question. I mean, if donating money was a competition, which sort of is, that would lead to great advances in philanthropy, because, you know, the billionaires would almost like, it would be like an auction of like who can donate more. It's like, look at me donating $5 billion to this cause. I'm going to raise you $7 billion. But yeah, it's not happening. All right, let's see where we can get with this. Yeah, I'm back to the paper that I like drawing on. I still have these samples, but even though they have nice texture, the graphite doesn't stick to them. And this, I feel like the graphite really stays on the paper. It's almost like the paper is listening to the pencil. It absorbs the information that the pencil wants to leave on it. It's more sensitive. I can have more control over the intensity of the lines. Right now I'm barely touching the paper. And I don't know what's going to happen with this. I think the stripy kind of pattern will lead to a little bit more uniform composition maybe. But I'm yet to try just drawing like a little shape that's not even limited by a rectangular frame, just sort of a blobby shape, which I've done but off camera. And maybe I should show you some of the drawings. I'll do a little overlay of some of the drawings that I've done without complaining and off camera, because there's a difference. There's a little bit more intensity in focus when I drew these standalone drawings, and while I'm talking, it's just very interesting to have this split attention and have these drawings a little bit more on a surface, I would call them, or sort of a little bit less involved, because part of the brain energy is not wasted, but used on words. And the funny thing is that every single video that I posted so far has about 90 minutes, and then I edit it down to about an hour and 20 minutes, and it does make sense. It's sort of, when you look at lengths of things, when you go to a concert, when it's more than 90 minutes, it gets tedious and boring. Movies, parties, you just kind of start to feel uneasy and you want to leave after 90 minutes. And I do feel like I have to wrap up once this amount of time passes. And also, when I was a long distance runner, my sweet spot was running for an hour and 30 minutes. And it's very strange how this biological clock kind of has this really kind of preset pattern for a lot of things. Like in running, I would run for an hour and a half, because usually the marathon length, I would run marathon for over 3 hours as just an average runner. I ran 3 of them, and I was trying to get into Boston Marathon, and I was 2 minutes short. First time I was 2 minutes short, second time I was 1 minute short, and then I got frustrated because the second time I ran pretty fast, but it was freezing cold. It was in lower Massachusetts, and I had to go to the bathroom because there was no way for the moisture to leave my body other than going to the toilet. So like that little bathroom break robbed me of that 1 minute that I needed to qualify for Boston Marathon. But 3 hours of running is, over 3 hours, like I would finish with, my best time was, I think, 3 hours and 12 minutes. It was over pretty much twice as much as I liked to run, because I really enjoyed half marathons, and it will be usually an hour and 30 minutes. And that's the kind of really great amount of time to do everything. Like, I think my sweet spot when I was running was running sort of with an easy pace, maybe, I don't know, 7.5 minutes per mile for 8 miles. That was like at mile 8 to mile 9, I would feel glorious. It would be like flow state. I felt like I could run forever, and that's the kind of feeling that can be tricky. It can betray you when you're running a marathon, because you have to run 3 times as much. 8 miles is not enough. But you feel great at mile 8, and you feel like you can do it forever. But then suddenly the fatigue kicks in, and the muscles get fatigued. The lactate threshold is too much, and it feels like you have to stop, except you can't, because you have twice as much to run. And that's the experience of running a marathon. And the strange phenomenon of that last mile being the hardest, and I would feel exhausted and feeling like I can't make it at mile, theoretically at mile 20, I would bonk out at mile 19 if it was the last mile. And there's something to it, like finishing up things is always this extra push, extra challenge. Speaking of, I'm about mile, I would say mile 13. Oh yeah, 13 point, oh yeah, now I remember. 13.1 is half marathon, 26.2 is marathon. I can't believe I forgot it. Having been avid runner for over a decade. I've been out of the game for too long. Tendonitis. Yeah, but I do like that. It's it's interesting when you do it. When I was a runner, I liked watching races, but only because I've experienced it myself, and I think that there's no person on earth that would watch runners on TV or even going to a race not having experienced any running. Maybe, but I liked watching races just to get inspired by people's techniques, the way they run, the gait, and they turned over their what I was going to say, yeah, the posture and their little hacks, strategies. It wouldn't be interesting to me if I've never run. But it's meditative. It's an experience that nobody else can experience for you. You have to experience it for yourself. And many people see running as being very boring, which is true, but what does it mean for something to be boring? Is meditation boring? Sure it is, but it's not the point. It's being in a suspended state of mind that people call flow state, which is not boring to the one that experiences it. And yoga too, I mean, yoga has this reputation of it's almost like golf. The kind of rich and affluent people carrying fancy yoga mats around and Lululemon pants for $400. Mostly women, which is interesting because yoga being considered sometimes even ridiculed by these alpha males that are into lifting, that it's an easy kind of activity for girls. Yoga can really kick your ass. It's not that it's not that easy. Once you tried it, you will know. So and now it's sort of a discipline of affluent ladies in the suburbs or gated communities, which is a strange cultural shift from it being a discipline of the mind mostly. Through body, the mind would be trained to be resilient and it's thousands of years of tradition turned into this quirky cultural phenomenon for suburban ladies. It's just, I don't know, I feel like yoga was very helpful to me during the pandemic, especially. I found a YouTube channel. Probably everybody knows this channel. It's the most famous channel about yoga out there, Yoga with Adrian. And during the pandemic, they it was sort of I felt very limited, like everybody else, especially during the lockdown. And yoga offered this opportunity to find 4 square feet beneath your feet of mat that offered unlimited possibilities. And it was a great way to stay in shape and to also relax, to take your mind off of the situation. So I think during the pandemic, her channel really took off. And even me, like, I would never, like, if you asked me if I would try yoga at any point in my life, I would just laugh at you. Like, me, yoga? No, I'm a bro. I like running, parkour. I tried some amateur boxing back in the day. I had a punching bag in my studio. It was a very great way to unload the frustrations. Punch something. It's something nice to do. Like hang a punching bag somewhere. Punch it when you feel frustrated. But yoga, I still use yoga as a way to reset my body, because sometimes there's some blockages and muscle aches, mobility issues, and I just log on to that channel and I pick one video, and it's usually not very difficult. Some of them are more difficult than others, but it always helps. And then another thing is that people prefer guided yoga classes. I think there's very few people that just practice yoga on their own and just improvise it, or maybe they know what they need at the moment and they just do it. Often people want guidance and they want to follow a teacher. And I've seen it many times when I was coaching. People would feel safe in the imitation. I don't know if it makes sense, but to the point of, like, even before we started the warm-up, I would stand in a certain way and explain what we're going to do today. And I saw some of the students assuming the same pose I was in. And I was like, oh, no, we're not starting yet. It's just sort of people are ready to imitate. And we have this ingrained feature of how we learn, which is through imitation, and we feel safer having a guidance rather than trying to figure things out on our own. Just kind of like, I compared the ones to the difference between driving on a highway and driving a boat in the middle of the ocean with no compass. Having some sort of guardrails is calming, and that's why people sign up to these, like, group exercises and Pilates, and you see people like doing this vigorous activity outside with the trainer having a microphone, a very loud speaker, and maybe some music, and everybody follows the directions. In some way, it's a little scary to think about humans in such categories, because it's a slippery slope to, like, following a dear leader. Tell us what to do. This reminds me of that scene from Life of Brian. Tell us what to do, master. I am not your master. You're not our master. No, I'm telling you, you are individuals and you should make your own decisions. Yes, we are individuals and we should make our own decisions. It's just, you should, if you haven't seen Life of Brian, or even that one fragment, find it on YouTube. It's real. It's a riot. And it's not just, I mean, it's comedy, but also it has deep philosophical elements of dissecting human nature, human psychology. We are the imitation monkeys. We want to learn through imitating, or we just want to imitate for its own sake. Most things you see is all the cool things that are popular you see is basically some kind of imitation. Maybe someone is imitating a voice of a celebrity, someone is drawing a picture of something else. It's never anything like this, which explains why I think the most views I got in one of those videos is maybe 13 views, and which is great. Like I finally got a double digit views numbers. But it doesn't imitate anything. I mean, it imitates just the way nature arranges itself randomly, like in a tree bark or rock formations. But it doesn't, imitation is our game. Mimetic mindset. We want something to look like something else. Like we demand the artist draws a still life that looks exactly as if it was photographed. It has to be imitating nature in illusionistic way, not like this way, but illusionistic meaning by using perspective tricks and certain light tricks, the way light behaves when it hits objects. Artists learn it in art schools. You just create this illusion of depth. Even here, there's a little bit of depth here that your brain interprets as space. I think I have about 2 or 3 more stripes to do, and not much more things to talk about. And I wonder how much time passed. Yeah, I feel like I'm rushing. I'm kind of now beholden to the principle of 90 minutes. What if sometimes the drawing lasts more than that? And who will stick around? If you're still here, like, how? Maybe you are working on something and you need some kind of background. Or if it puts you to sleep, then it's even better. But I think like there will be no human on earth that will be hooked to this content for entire duration of it, which is an experiment. I don't have expectations about it, and no worries. No expectations, no worries. What if this channel doesn't take off? What does it mean to take off? It already took off. I have a bunch of videos out, and that's all I need. And does it improve? Maybe. I know it progresses or changes to some degree. but change is progress. This is probably one of the other reasons that we like changing things. We want to rearrange our apartments. We shift furniture around and like, oh, this looks better. And we like to change things because without changing things, we would never stumble upon improvements and progress. So try to change something. Maybe even change your pose. Maybe even stand up. Do 10 squats right now. You can pause the video now. Do 10 squats, maybe 5 push-ups. Do some kind of dance move. Because I think sitting for too long is usually detrimental to health. So I encourage you to find a way to move, to apply some kind of movement at least every 45 minutes when you're working on a project. Maybe every half an hour, maybe every 20 minutes even after a while. I always say, keep your body in a state of being warmed up, if you can. And of course, if you feel like it's too much, give it a rest, If you're tired, take a nap. If you're tired, pull over. If you're hungry, eat something. If you know what movie it's from, maybe I should try to think of some kind of reward. Alright, the first person who guesses what this quote is from will receive this drawing in the mail. How is that? That is, of course, if the drawing doesn't get lost. Then in this case, I would have to think about maybe some other drawing from other day. I'm not good at keeping my artworks. Where is it all going? I see figures, some kind of movement. This part gets a little lighter. But I think I broke away from the kind of pattern that I've been repeating, which was like blobs, larger blobs here, and some kind of squeeze in the middle here, or rather in the 2/3, and then some kind of resolution on this side. It's a little bit more uniform. But I think I'll have this stripe finished and then one more, and then we can wrap up our 90-minute experience. Sometimes maybe it's better not to talk about stuff. Just shut up and draw. Here's a fold in the paper that created this little interesting spot. And sometimes I'm trying to resolve by more pressure, and then it creates this extra dark spot here. More texture. And there's some conscious decisions that I make, like if a shape kind of turns this way, then I'm trying to counter it by drawing it, turning it the other way. But sometimes I let it go all the way this way. I wonder what time it is. It's getting dark. Later on we're going to a lecture, which is sort of like a free lecture in an art studio, where a biologist will talk about the life of insects, just sort of random. But one other thing about being here is that there are these cool events, lectures that people can just sign up for and go and learn stuff without being, forced to pay money for tuition. And it's sort of like education for everyone and social pretexts to see other humans, talk about interesting stuff, ask some questions. So yeah, anything to do with biology, I'm always up for it, especially the ecosystems, aquatic, non-aquatic, insects, birds. I still don't know nearly enough about it. Alright, this part is a little like a unresolved gray area here, but we need those too. If everything had action in it, it would be just boring. It would be all music but no silence in between notes. I think I got used to the glove. It feels quite comfortable. Maybe even better than holding a pencil in my bare hand. Alright, almost time for the last strip. I hope I won't run out of ink or won't shut down. I'm yet to find a printer that never breaks. We have a laser printer that works pretty well, but it's already starting to show signs of glitchiness and wear and tear. Printers are tricky. There's a lot of moving parts that have to work. But this is basically what I am today. Just a printer. I can see a little bit of the toner strips being here. I'm going to kind of really go for it and just cover the whole strip, because I think it might be time to end it soon. I'm going to finish that part, and I'm probably not going to come back to edit stuff too much, unless off camera. Then I will show you the final result. What if I don't finish it? Yeah, that would be kind of a question of like, does it always have to be a finished piece? And in this case, unfinished piece would mean that there would be a missing strip. Whereas if I would address the whole drawing in its entirety from the beginning, it would just emerge from a pale kind of composition with more graphite being laid out on top. Then it would be a little bit harder to tell when it's finished. But if I ended here, I think I would risk a lot of disappointment. It would be like an unfinished meal. That's something that bugs me in the movies. Like, whenever there's someone preparing food or ordering food in a restaurant or anything to do with food in the movies or TV show, so you see someone eating or starting to eat, and then they get a phone call or someone interrupts them, and they don't get to finish the meal. And it's always this one trope that comes back in all the movies. Unfinished meals, and like, is it some kind of, I don't know where it comes from. It always frustrates me. It's a way for the filmmakers to mess with their audience, or the way people don't pick up the phones and it keeps ringing, and And we know that it's an urgent phone call because someone is calling from a train station when they're being followed by a creep, and they're like, oh, help me, pick up, and they just, no, I'm not going to pick up. And the phone keeps ringing, and it gets really tense, and you get angry at the person who doesn't pick up the phone. But then in real life, I don't pick up the phone because I have caller ID and I see who's calling me, and usually the same people call me, my spouse and I don't know who else, the doctor sometimes. But then other than that, if I see a strange number, I just don't pick up because it's usually spam. Then I block it, or some kind of solicitor. It's pretty invasive. So yeah, I don't pick up the phone either. But like, it really bugs me in the movies when they don't. So like, they don't pick up the phone, they don't finish their meals. It's very dramatic, I guess. But I promise I'm going to finish this drawing, even if I run out of things to talk about. Even if I have to turn on the time lapse. Oh, I've been reading books in Polish. I sometimes like to buy books in my native language. So I have 3 books. One is kind of a non-fiction book about Poland and the history of the land where Poland is now, in thousands of years before Poland was Poland, and starting way back, when the ape-shaped species were roaming those parts, and then the mammoth hunters and first peoples that showed up in this area and then went north. So a lot of people who were in the Eastern Europe, where Poland is right now, they were hunting reindeer because it was cold. And then as the climate was warming, the reindeer were going north, and then people from these areas were following the reindeer. And now they're, in the Arctic Circle. Those are the people who now hunt reindeer still, because they're still there. And then the people from the south came over and settled where those people used to be, and then became farmers. Oh, and the archaeological findings, even near my hometown, are quite interesting. There's an evidence of like Greek elements found near the river where I grew up, because people were moving around a lot, and there were influences of cultures found all over the place. And then I also found that the cheese, special type of cheese that is very characteristic in Poland. It's kind of sour cheese made of milk. We call it twaróg, and it's a kind of cheese that just made by the milk getting sour, basically spoiled milk. It becomes like a kefir or yogurt, and it becomes sour, and then you wait for it to curd, and you run it through a mesh. So the mesh, there was a mesh that they found that was 7,000 years old, and the archaeologists were not sure whether this mesh was used to make cheese, until they found that it has traces of some kind of fats found in milk. So the oldest twaróg in on Polish land is from 7,000 years ago. Okay, so that's one book I'm reading, and then the other one, I bought them. I bought all the 3 books in the airport, in 3 different airports. The next one is Solaris, fiction, science fiction to be precise, by Stanisław Lem. Stanisław Lem is a great Polish science fiction novelist who died in, I think, late 90s or early 2000s. And a lot of science fiction readers really enjoy his books all over the world. And they get envious when I tell them that I can read his book in their original language. So like, I'm reading Solaris now. And then the third book is by a kind of sort of in between fiction and non-fiction, little stories written by a Nobel Prize winner, Hungarian author. He won a Nobel Prize, I think, last year. And I will put his name up because I can't pronounce it. Very interesting, innovative writing. There are stories with a philosophical twist. There's always something to think about after you read one of those stories. It's very innovative. It's very hard to describe for now, but it just deals with the ideas of, compassion and the idea of the wholeness. There's the concept of everything being like a thing that you can imagine as an object. Everything in the universe is a thing. That's kind of an interesting concept. As in Solaris, there's this concept of, without too much spoilers, because it's basically in the beginning of the book already, the concept of an organism that encompasses an entire planet and manipulates its gravitational properties through, changing its form and therefore adapting the planet to be able to survive the turbulent gravitational forces of 2 stars that it's revolving around. And the speculation was in the beginning of the book that scientists thought that it was an organism with consciousness, giant sea-like plasma that surrounds the entire planet is an organism, and it evolved into that. There was no other organism, so basically a planet with just one inhabitant, a giant plasma of ocean-like something. So that's kind of cool concept. So a lot of these concepts that Lem wrote about are a departure from the stereotypical writing about aliens, green men with big eyes and pointy ears. It's a little bit deeper. It's about things that human mind can barely imagine as being a living creature from the outer planet. What could it be? It could be something that we can't even comprehend. An energy, or I don't know, a dust, a cloud of something, cells that are like a swarm of cells that act and in unison, or a plasma of some kind. So like really cool thought experiment about what makes an alien potentially. We're nearing the finish line, and as in marathon, this final bit is challenging. Even though it's probably going to end up being a gray kind of gray area, because we already have the major composition here in the middle, kind of. And then that means that it's better to like let things go in other areas, to highlight these parts here that are more as a conversation piece, I guess. And then everything else is just background, which is also important. You need a stage for something, which is sort of... we can't really think in categories other than imagining a background for something. So like, let's say this drawing has a background in the form of a paper, but the paper is on the table. So it's a conundrum of infinity. The table is also not like, it has to have a support of the floor, and the floor is part of the house, and the house is, and so on and so on, until you get to the, you know, infinite universe. We can't really think, a human mind can't comprehend something without a stage of some kind. Imagine something that's just outside of reality. Like even infinity itself, we kind of imagine it as something with a background against which we view it. We can't really imagine things without any background or a stage. So I don't know why I talk about that, but yeah, I'm creating a background for these shapes that are more defined here, but here they're just going to be the grayness here is going to just highlight the things that seem more interesting in the middle of the drawing. And this is very likely where we will end. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you in the next one.